Good evening. My name's Chris, and today I'm looking at a lens which is very interesting indeed, but not very well known. The Tamron 60mm f2 macro. It's designed for aps-c cameras only. This is a full macro lens giving 1:1 magnification. Basically, it's designed to give you high quality, extreme close-up pictures that normal lenses simply aren't designed to get. Macro photography can be a lot of fun, although often you'll need to use a tripod, especially as this lens doesn't have image stabilization. Because the lens has a wide maximum aperture of f2, it can also double up as a very good portrait lens, useful for getting a very blurry background in your pictures. f2 also lets in a lot of light, so it could also be useful for nighttime or indoor photography. Canon make a similar 60mm f2.8 macro lens, but that can only let in half the amount of light as this Tamron lens, and it can't give quite the same out of focus background as any f2 lens. Basically, the f2 maximum aperture of the Tamron device is seriously nice, and together with the lens's macro capability, this becomes an excellent alternative to Canon's extremely popular 50mm f1.8 lens, or their 60mm f2.8 macro. Let's look at the lens's build quality. It's not a small lens, but it's nice and light. Generally, it feels a bit cheap and plasticky because, well, it's cheap and plasticky. The most important thing on the lens is that nice, large manual focus ring. Unusually for a Tamron lens of its age, this has full-time manual focusing, so you can safely turn that focus ring anytime. The front element of the lens does not turn or extend, which is very good to see. If you're turning the focus ring and you change direction, then it takes a little give before the gears actually move with the mechanism, which is mildly annoying, but not really a huge problem. It turns quite smoothly and evenly, and the focus path is very long indeed, which means that manual focusing in macro work is quite precise, as you can see in this magnified video footage. The autofocus motor is nice and quiet, but it isn't very fast, and it sometimes gets confused and hunts around a little bit. I can't comment on the autofocus accuracy because I had to send my lens back, as it front focused enormously. I think the accuracy will probably be okay if you can get a copy that's working properly. All in all, the lens is quite cheap and functional, and it works okay. There's not much to the thing, really. Let's move on and look at image quality. This lens is designed for aps-c cameras, so let's see how it performs on my 18MP Canon 6DD. Macro lenses aren't exactly Tamron's specialty, and f2 is a very wide maximum aperture, so I wasn't sure how the lens would test out, but it's actually very impressive. Straight from f2, the lens is very sharp in the middle of the image, right through into the corners. What a great performance! The only problem is some quite prominent chromatic aberration on contrasting edges. As you can see on the edges of the window panes, there's some fairly strong purple highlighting. But aside from that, the lens's contrast levels are very nice, and you're getting a great looking image. As you stop the lens down to f2.8, the sharpness levels are basically perfect, but the chromatic aberration sticks around. The lens stays super sharp until about f16, where the physical effects of diffraction mean that a little softness is creeping in. At f22, the image is quite soft. That's all good to see, but as this is a macro lens, let's take a quick look at close-up picture quality. With the aperture set to f2, you can see the absolutely minuscule depth of field on a picture of this fork. The area in focus is reasonably sharp, getting better when you stop the lens down to f2.8, and it's super sharp and contrasty at f4. It stays this sharp until f11, which is a little softer. f16 looks pretty weak, and f22 is very soft. So it's a shame that the lens isn't sharper at narrower apertures, because you tend to use those a lot doing macro photography. But you do get a nice sweet spot between f4 and f8, and that's also a typical macro lens performance on an aps-c camera. Okay, let's look at distortion and corner darkness, or vignetting. The lens displays an amount of barrel distortion which is basically negligible. Vignetting at f2 is not very strong, and if you stop down to f2.8, it goes away and the corners brighten up. This is a very nice performance. As we've already seen, a 60mm lens can give you a very out of focus background when the aperture is as wide as f2. Some more good news is that the quality of those backgrounds, also known as the lens's bokeh, is very nice and smooth without any busyness or distracting colours and highlights. For a lens like this, that's vital. I think that this Tamron lens has nicer quality bokeh than a Canon 60mm f2.8 macro lens. On a related note, the Tamron lens has a little bit of a struggle on its hands with longitudinal chromatic aberration. As you can see in this picture, at f2, the out of focus highlights have a green colour behind the plane of focus and pink in front. It's not horrendously bad though, and once you stop down to f4, it's basically gone away. As you can see in this footage, the lens handles bright lights averagely well, with some typical flaring and a lack of contrast. But frankly, this is a portrait and macro lens, so it's not a problem you'll be coming up with very often. Overall, the Tamron 60mm f2 macro is a very impressive little thing, the dark horse of Tamron's lens lineup, scoring highly on pretty much every test I could throw at it. It's a bit of a shame it's not well known in my opinion. It's also a shame about the high levels of chromatic aberration it displays, and its build quality isn't the best. But then again, it's a very inexpensive lens. Macro photography is a huge amount of fun. So if you're thinking of getting a fast 50mm lens, like most people are, then consider this Tamron lens instead. It could be much more fun for you. Highly recommended.